Hello, friends, and welcome back. The primary focus of today is to move to the next planet, which is Mercury. And one thing, just as a matter of housekeeping, if you guys find this video something that is of value to you, I'd be grateful to you if you like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, if you guys are interested in my readings, courses, classes, and archetypal life narrative counseling, you can go to my website at parisayazi.com. All that information will be in the description box below. So let us dive right in. The next point that I want to bring up is Mercury as a psychopomp. Mercury is considered the psychopomp. In myths like Hermes, in the Greek myths, he's the only god that can freely move between different worlds, between two worlds, which is essentially the worlds between the sun and the moon, the soul and the mind. He's also the one who guides souls through different kinds of thresholds, like from life to death. It's like the realm between the living and the dead, where that threshold and that boundary that usually holds all other entities, Mercury can cross it. It's like the crossing between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, conscious mind being the sun and the unconscious mind being the moon, the day and the night, the planet of the twilight. And we can also take this in terms of how we are able to receive messages within ourselves. The psychopomp, the Mercury within us, that drive within us. And if you reflect on your own life and just the way you are, I'm convinced of this. Everyone has a higher voice within that speaks to them. And you've probably heard this voice within yourself. This voice that's internal, it's wiser than we actually are. It knows things that we don't yet know. It discloses things that we shouldn't know because we don't have the background knowledge or information, but it's a very mysterious insight that guides us. Suddenly it'll give us an advice, and it's right, it's wise, it knows something. And we usually hear it as our own internal voice. It's ourselves, but it's not ourselves because it's wiser. It's usually very subtle, but it's also very clear. And I would argue that is Mercury transmitting messages. It is Mercury that's transmitting the messages of the soul, the sun, to the manifested form for the soul, which is the body, and the mind, which is the moon. So it's going from that realm of the soul to the moon and delivering those messages. And the soul is supposed to be indivisible. It's whole, it's perfect. So it knows everything. It is the mind and the body that is partial and is experiencing from minute to minute, hour to hour, experiencing things through the rhythm of being. So Mercury is delivering the message of the soul, of the self soul, that solar self, to the self in its manifested form. But in the narcissist, this function also comes to lose its sacred role. And it's very clear. And on the first point, the narcissist is not connected to its true self. Talked about in the last video again, what we could call the solar self or the soul. There's no real guidance coming through because the narcissist has been disconnected from his true self. So the connection of that inner voice has been severed. The messenger is on a chokehold. Or at best, instead of Mercury getting the messages from the soul to give it to the self as his wisdom, is getting the messages from the false self. So in a way, Mercury becomes a gatekeeper. It's not going between the realms of wisdom and clarity. It's going between these constructed and curated worlds of the narcissist's inner world, its fantasies and its illusions, which are very fragile. And then if to look at what does this look like? We saw it all so far. I mean, what the narcissist is doing externally is also doing it internally. Like that dazzling reframing of language, or through its selective memory, on the fly narratives, its fantastical confabulations. All of them are there at the service of the false self. So why would this inner voice have a different function? And it's not like the narcissist is only sending distorted messages to the world by externalizing the false self. They're also receiving them internally. And the craziest thing is that when you talk to narcissists, they actually think that their inner voice is very sacred. It feels like destiny to them. It sounds like truth to them. Like a lot of us have these inner voices, we don't even talk about them. We're just like, it just feels like a beautiful moment of knowing. It is actually sacred and we keep it that way. But the narcissist will come out and say, they feel chosen. There something about their inner self is telling them that they're chosen. They're something like the Messiah. They're supposed to change the world. Like they'll tell you, I feel that I'm not just special. There's something very exceptional about me. And they have this sense, because of this inner voice, there's a sense of entitlement that must come to them. Like they feel that they are entitled to success and admiration because of this message of greatness that the false self is constantly transmitting to the narcissist. And in the last video, I was saying, even the infant starts to build a kind of a self-narrative about how it must be perfect and how it must be great. This is a way to deal with what it's experiencing as an infant. And you'll also see this in how narcissists express themselves in terms of some of the messages that they give. A lot of the self-help stuff, it has that kind of a tone to it. Like, it's okay if you're not perfect yet. The best of you that is yet to be. The perfect you is waiting to emerge. Then you'll feel it, and then you'll be it. They just get this like fantastical thing that it's coming from some sort of an inner conviction. It's coming from that psychopomp function. But with the narcissist, not going from the soul to the self, is going from the false self to the self. And the false self needs that grandiosity. So we can see where these kinds of narratives are coming from. And, you know, their proneness to fantasy and illusions, it almost feels like a character that's trapped in a dream. And the dream is telling it message of like prophetic messages, like you are the prophet, you are special. But it's just ultimately a feedback loop that's designed to keep the real self silent and hidden in a lot of ways, to feed the false self. So in a lot of ways, even the divine messenger has been hijacked by the narcissist's inner structure. And instead of leading the soul, the narcissist, through the threshold of growth and truth, is circling the walls of its false self. It's guarding its illusions, spinning stories, and delivering false promises, which is essentially is exalting the narcissist in some ways, and at the same time, the false self is keeping the narcissist a prisoner of itself. All right, we're almost at the end. So I'm gonna finish the function of Mercury in a narcissist by actually talking about Mercury's core function, which is interpretation. And I say it's a core function because Mercury is what allows us to interpret reality. It's what decodes experience and names things and translates meaning into speech, which allows us to have shared experiences. But we have to ask a question. What is Mercury interpreting in the narcissist? And we have to realize in the narcissist, Mercury is no longer decoding life through the lens of the true self. The true self was lost in childhood. What Mercury is constantly decoding, naming, and interpreting for the narcissist is the content of the false self. And that means every interpretation is bent. It's misaligned or it's co-opted. And all of this to serve the false self. And again, referencing the last video, once the sun and moon, which is about the core self and the emotional mind, have been wounded and obscured the way it is in the narcissist, every planet that follows tend to fall in line as part of a psychological defense team. And Mercury becomes the first line of defense and one of the primary players in this system of protection. You know, the crazy thing is the narcissist doesn't just use what's external in the world to supply itself. Even the internal archetypes and the drives, like Mercury, are also hijacked to become a kind of a supply for the false self. Maybe that's why the narcissist thinks itself is something akin to God or close to God. This false self is quite strong. A lot of us struggle to get our drives within under control. But somehow, whatever that has happened in the structure of the narcissist has even hijacked the drives to serve the false self. So when it comes to interpretation, Mercury's job is no longer about inquiry or trying to figure things out. It's to make up stories, whatever it takes, to keep and to maintain this false self, to affirm it. Mercury has to reinforce the kind of reality the narcissist needs to feed this false self. So when you look at Mercury in the context of a chart, regarding everything that we talked about, we always want to see the relationship of Mercury to Sun and Moon. If Mercury is under pressure in relation to these two planets by sign, house, or aspects, and is somehow struggling against the Sun and the Moon, and remember, Mercury owns two signs, it can suggest an intellect that's being pulled to the threshold of its function. It can start to express its shadow points the way that we're talking about right now. Somehow Mercury has to be indicating that it's upholding the self-concept. That's what I'm saying. It has to somehow relate to the Sun and Moon in a dysfunctional manner. Or the Sun is placed in a house where it's obscured, let's say the 12th house. And then we look at where Mercury is. And Mercury relative to the Sun is also struggling. So we want to look at these kinds of dynamics. I will come back and make a whole video giving explicit examples of placements, signs, conjunctions, things of this nature in Indian astrology, the kind of yogas that can indicate such things. We'll talk about all of this. So we're going to wrap up the episodes here. A hell of a lot longer than I thought. And in our next episode, we'll jump into the symbolic meaning of Venus, which is the archetype for connection, love, and we're going to see how Venus is also co-opted by the false self. And we'll look at how Venus isn't just employed by the false self to get narcissistic supply, but it is the kind of methods it employs to lock it down, what the narcissist does to maintain its own desirability and to keep the performance of beauty, charm, charisma, or a sense of self-worth just to protect and to maintain this false self. But that's it for now. Stay clear, stay grounded, and may your Mercury always serve truth and never illusions and fantasies. Sending you much love. Till next time.